All right, everybody, how's it going? My name is Collin Brooks, and welcome to Gamification Basics. Thanks for taking the time to learn about gamification and spend about 45 minutes with me. Before I get into this presentation, I just wanted to say thank you to the IFRD board for running a conference online from being flexible, from pivoting and to a webinar-based conference, and having so many people around the world be able to benefit from that. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this. All right, so with that, we're going to get right into things here. So, all right, like I said, my name is Collin Brooks. You can find me at Collin Brooksy on Twitter. Just a couple things about me. So I've done a lot of things with phys-edagogy. I've blogged with phys-edagogy if you're familiar with phys-edagogy, and done a lot of phys ed summits with my friends with phys-edagogy. I've done some stuff with Shape America as a board of director, and as well as worked on the Shape America podcast. I taught elementary physical education for 10 years and was a national board and am a national board certified teacher, I should say. And I'm just finishing up my doctorate right now, and I'm starting my career as assistant professor at the University of West Georgia. And I'm going to be teaching future physical educators, which I'm pumped about. So go Wolves. All right, so just a little bit quick introductory about me, and I want to talk about today's purpose. All right, so today what you're going to be talking about, or I'm going to be talking about with you, is basically I want to give you some tools that you can implement in a physical education class. Now, I say physical education, that's kind of the primary piece of this. However, if you're a health teacher, this can work for you too. Now, I taught elementary physical education, K-5. However, this can transcend that, and it can go into secondary, right? So there's different pieces that you're going to be able to take, and we're going to go over a lot of foundational stuff around gamification. So I really, really suggest that you stick around to kind of learn some of that, and I hope that it's helpful to you. So the biggest thing whenever I'm presenting and thinking about this is I would like you to take maybe just even one thing. So just try to take one thing and think about how you can use it, right? And what's great about a webinar or a digital presentation is if you don't understand, just push pause and go back and watch it again. And you might have to do that more with me than with others, so I apologize for that. But I hope this presentation is helpful to you. So let's get this thing rolling here. Okay, so I'm going to just show you. This is a little timeline of me. All right, so here's Brooksy in kindergarten here. I was an 80s kid, right? And Mario was a big deal to me. So Nintendo came out in 1985. In 1987, I started kindergarten. And it was a big deal to me to play Nintendo with my brother and do duck hunting and all that stuff. That was great. And then in second grade, for better or worse, I got my own personal video game. I was like, it's mine. I can use it whenever I want. And so forth, as long as it's okay with my parents, right? So that was a big deal as well. And I loved video games, right? And then in third grade, I began to understand these team sports. I found these team sport video games, and I was like mind blown because I loved being outside. I loved physical activity. And it was an interesting byproduct of this was that I learned so many rules to team sports by playing video games, like all the rules to hockey, uh, there's like offsides and everything. I didn't understand that until I started playing those video games, and I loved it. I guess the biggest thing that I can really think about that I loved about video games was this whole reward piece, right? I got a reward. Now the reward could have been, I passed a level. It could have been a lot of different things, but it was all about that. And if you're familiar with Dr. George Graham, who's lead author of Children Moving, right? They talk about this flow zone, right? Where we don't want to go too high to frustrate students, and we don't want to go too low. We got to kind of flow in the middle, right? And I think that video games do a good job of staying like in this flow zone for students or for children or youth, whoever plays them, right? And if you don't pass a level, you go back and do it again. And that's okay, right? You can fail and do it again. The biggest consequence is you lose what you did in the game, right? So there's so many aspects of video games that are helpful and that were not awesome for me. But to be honest, I don't play them anymore at all, except if I play like Dance Dance Revolution with my kids or something like that. Just different priorities, right? And so forth. But I still really value those different components of video games. And they're important to kind of think about. We think about students sitting around and lack of physical activity, but that's one thing, right? And I totally get that. But there's this other piece that understanding the whole engagement piece behind video games, and how can we put that into a different setting? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. All right, so we're going to essentially talk about this whole process in four different levels. So level one is understanding the very basics of gamification, go over some very basic foundational understandings of gamification. We're going to talk about key terms in level two of our presentation here today. Level three will be all practical. Like this is my experience implementing it within a practical setting. We're talking about my failures and talk about my successes within it. And then level four, you're gonna have an opportunity to just learn some basic tools that you can create some gamification experiences for your students. And those are going to be actually centered around what's called badging or digital badges. So we'll get to that here briefly. Okay, so, all right, this is our friend Baby Yoda, or the child, right? And then we have the Mandalorian. So we're going to go on a quest today, and you are now the Mandalorian, okay? So if you're familiar with the Disney Plus show, that's been pretty highly successful. And this is an important part of thinking about gamification. So we take things oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes related to pop culture and put them into some kind of game to really get students engaged and excited about what's going on. And that's essentially what we've done here. So you are the Mandalorian, and your job is to take Baby Yoda, or the child, around to these different planets. And you're going to learn through these different planets all the different types of gamification. So, you ready? It's a little nerdy, but we're gonna do it, okay? So let's go right into this here. All right, so here's our planets. So we have the first planet we're gonna go through, and you can see our little track that we're gonna go to. And as soon as you beat one planet, you're gonna learn the planet you're gonna unlock the next planet, and you'll learn the name of that specific planet, all right? And have an opportunity to get a digital badge through going through that. So, okay, we're at level one right now. Level one is called Planet Foundation. So we've landed at Planet Foundation on our quest to learn about gamification, and let's get this thing going. All right, so gamification, a very simple a very simple idea about gamification is the act of applying elements of games in a non-game environment, okay? So we have game elements such as levels, such as badging, and other things such as that, that you take from a game. And it doesn't have to be a video game, but that's kind of what we're most familiar with, right? Is this idea that we use video games. It could be a board game. It could be a card game. It could be a role-playing game. You're taking elements, you take those elements and you put them into a non-game setting, such as, in our case, a physical education classroom or a health education classroom, okay? So we're getting started with that. I hope that makes sense. And another thing that's really interesting and things to consider is research is showing us that gamification is considered a way to engage learners of various age groups, cultures, and settings. So it's transcending upon a lot of things. And this kind of brings me to the point, it's really, really, really important that you think about your students and you know your students. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know that everyone that's watching this knows this, but it's so important to really think about our children or our students as individuals. How do we meet their needs, right? How do we find out more about them? And that's kind of what we can do through this. You can give students surveys, understanding their likes, their dislikes. You can base these gamification activities upon this. All right, so gamification, here's some things to consider. Gamification is dependent upon effective and pre-existing instructional content. So gamification isn't rewriting everything and starting from scratch. I want you right now to think about one unit that you teach. And this unit is something that you know is important. You know that it's based upon standards, but you also know sometimes it might be difficult for students to be engaged in this unit. Okay, this is just an example, or something you just really, really want to make even better, right? So we take that unit and we add these game elements, right, to this unit, and something, you know, some amazing things can happen when you do that. So that's what gamification is. When you think about technology, right? I get really excited about technology and implementing technology in my class, but we can't just take technology that looks all shiny and new and implement it within our classroom. It has to be meaningful, right? It's the same thing about gamification. Okay, so another part about gamification is it's really about behaviors and attitudes, right? So we want to influence behaviors and attitudes so that learning can occur within a physical education classroom. So that's a big piece of gamification is this influencing of behaviors, right? Where we're trying, basically, we can say engage students at a higher level, right? We're trying to engage them and get them more into what we're teaching them. All right. There's more pieces of gamification. We're going to talk about them right now, right? So we have collaboration, all right? We have self-directed, and we have problem solving. We talked about engagement, right? Those are 21st century learning skills, all right? These are learning skills that we need our students to have when they leave. And, I've gotten further and further into education and teaching and learning and understanding it more. I've loosened up the leash, right? And tried to give more control to my students, and given student choice and student voice is so important, and gamification allows you that. It allows students to make choices during this, and I'll explain how that'll all work as we go through today. All right, so here's a misconception. When we think about gamification, we think that it is about technology. All right, it has something to do with technology, and the answer to that is yes, but also no, right? So Mike Genicola has said this too. Mike Genicola at Phys Ed Depot is definitely a leader within gamification, and someone that I suggest that you Google Phys Ed Depot to look at all his awesome things that he's doing. But this is something that he has said too, right? So you can use technology or you don't have to use technology. Again, it goes back to knowing our students, knowing the students' socioeconomic status, knowing their culture, knowing their families, knowing whether or not you have devices, and things such as that. So that's important to consider. Now, another thing to consider is that oftentimes, and I know that a lot of you are probably pretty familiar with this now if you weren't before, and it's this whole thing about learning management systems, right? So what I mean by why you're familiar with it now is because of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Where we've had to move so much of our things online, where we have to communicate with our students in this fashion. Well, learning management systems often have gamification elements built into them, or it's a great way to communicate with parents or students in a private manner, right? So that's definitely something to consider as you go through this. What learning management system do I have within my district? And, it could be Google Classroom. It could be a lot of different ones. There's a lot of them. So it's just district to district. So keep that in mind. But again, it doesn't have to be about technology. So congratulations to you. You have passed level 1. Now, if you've gone through level 1 and you feel like you need a repeat, grab the play button, drag it back to, not the play button, but grab the circle, drag it back to the beginning and watch level 1 again. But this is your digital badge right here. We're passing level 1 here of the quest. So this is something that I've had a lot of success with implementing within my physical education classes. All right, so if you would like a copy of this badge, you can get this badge in a couple of different ways. Okay, so the first way that you can get this badge is you can simply scan this QR code right here. So you're going to take out your phone, you're going to go to the photo app if you have an iPhone, and you're going to scan it, and there's going to be a drop down at the top, looks like a notification. You're going to click on that. It's going to take you right to this. All right, if you have an Android, I think you have to download an app still from the Google Play Store. So that's one way to get your hands on this badge. The other way to get your hands on this digital badge is to go to the resources that I've included with this presentation. So congrats. All right, you ready? Let's go onward to level 2. Okay, so we have now completed level 1, Planet Foundation. Okay, and we have unlocked level 2, which is Planet Terminology. All right, so let's get into Planet Terminology, and then we'll be unlocking the level 3 here in a minute. So, okay. So into level 2 here. So when we think about, this is just an overview, when we think about games, there's so many different game types, right, that I want you to think of. All right, and all these game types have different game elements. We'll talk about game elements in just a second. Now think about the different game types. This is just 3 examples, right? We have role-playing games, we have card games, and we have board games, right? So think about this for a minute. I haven't included video games. So there's all sorts of different, game types within video games, right? That you could think of. there's different aspects. So we think about role-playing game, we think about, within there's choose your own adventure, there's you become a different person, right, within a role-playing game. So those are things to consider. There's lots of different card games out there, right? And there's tons and tons of board games. So those are different game types. Now, there are things that are part of games that are considered elements that make them what they are, okay? Basic foundational elements, right? We have levels, we have badges, and we have quests. So these are just 3 examples that we're using today. And the reason I've used these is they're really common, right? And another reason is you're doing all 3 of them right now. So we are using levels. We're currently on level 2, right? Okay, we're using badges. Congratulations, you've already earned 1 badge, way to go. And then we're also on a quest to learn as much as we can about gamification on each planet before we advance to the next one. So those are the different game elements that we're using right now. Okay, now moving on here to digital badges. This is the one game element that I'm going to spend the most time talking about today, the one that I've used the most. Now, quests and levels are great. Like I said, we're going on the quest right now, or you're leveling up right now, but digital badges are, in my opinion, a great way for you to start. All right, so a digital badge is a digital representation of an accomplishment. When I say digital, we could take this and we could just cut it, right? And we could just do badges. We think about merit badges from Scouts, Girl and Boy Scouts, right? We have those things that have been around for a while. Badges have always been something that students have wanted to use to be successful, right? Or that it's something to show their accomplishment. Same thing with these badges. And what's great about badges and why I like them so much is it allows students to set goals and earn a reward based upon the completion of these. And again, for me, it's all about this student choice and student voice thing, right? Where students have the ability to choose what they want to learn, okay? And based upon that, they're gonna be, what I've seen is their engagement is gonna be high because, well, number one, they're goal setting, right? Which is a great skill that we need to work with students on, all right? And number 2, they get to choose their goal. So that's another thing. Okay, so this is another term or a couple terms I want to differentiate with you because I think oftentimes they get confused. Okay, so we have gamification. So we got a little bit of lag time here on this presentation, so I apologize on that. So we've got gamification and then we've got game-based learning, all right? So gamification, that's what we're talking about. So when we talk about gamification, we have adding game elements, check, we talked about that. Changing behavior, okay, we talked about that. And can provide learning and choice for students. Those are 3 things we talked about. We're gonna talk more about how to give students choice here shortly, all right? And then we have game-based learning. This is something different, all right? So when you use game-based learning, you're using an actual game to meet course outcomes, all right? Now, we're also learning comes from playing the actual game. That's really important to think about. I think something that you all might be familiar with is a flight simulator, right? A flight simulator is a game, but individuals that have to take this flight simulator to get so many hours on a flight simulator are learning through that flight simulator. So we're not taking certain elements like we would in that case and putting them somewhere else. We're actually playing a game to learn, all right? Some people in their classes, they use card games to learn. Maybe it's a social emotional learning game and so forth. And like I talked about, if you see that bottom bullet on the bottom right side, can provide a simulation for students learning. So just wanted to differentiate that for you as we go forward because oftentimes we get those things confused. So with that, congrats. So now we're 2 levels deep, okay? So if you want 2 of these badges, feel free, if you're watching, you're downloading here in a second to share these badges on Twitter or social media as you go through this and maybe tag me or don't tag me, either way, but it'd be great because I'll be scrolling through and I'll be seeing if people are passing these and sharing them. But either way is okay. So if you'd like to download this particular badge, all right, here's your QR code. So again, you can take out your phone, you can scan this QR code right here, and then boom, we're already basically halfway through our quest here. So If you didn't have enough time there, feel free to pause, go back, scan it, come back. Okay, so we have beaten level 1, we've beaten level 2, and we've unlocked level 3. All right, and we've learned the name of the third planet, and that's planet practicality. So this is the longest level, and there's a reason behind it, because the practical piece to anything that we're doing and any kind of learning is the most important to me, and I know it's the most important to you because, okay, you told me a bunch of definitions, right? Now, how do we use it actually? What does this look like? Well, that's what we're going to kind of go through right now, and I hope that it's helpful. And at any time, feel free to reach out to me as you go through this, and I'd be glad to work with you on that. So the number one piece of advice that I have for you is to keep it simple. This transfers over to so many different things within teaching, right? Whenever you implement something, you might be like me. I get super excited. I'm like, I want to do it all at once. And that usually doesn't work out too well. So my biggest suggestion for you is to keep it simple. All right. Now, I failed at the beginning of this idea of implementing gamification, specifically badging. And it didn't, I couldn't follow through on everything I wanted because it was too complicated. It put way too much on me. And it just wasn't plausible for me. But my students were really excited about it. I had all these great ideas, but it was just too much. So I flipped it, and then I started to think about, okay, what responsibilities can I give my students in this? How can I give them the learning instead of trying to maybe over control it, right? And I think that was a valuable lesson to me as a teacher for sure. So keep it simple. Implement things in small little doses is so extremely important. So consider yourself an experimenter, all right? Now, this is a trial and error process. It's trial and error because gamification is novel, right? And there's a lot of people out there that are starting to do it. A lot of people that are really interested in gamification, but there's not a textbook way of doing this as of right now, right? So there's a lot of trial and error. And even if there was a textbook doesn't tell us about our individual students, right? Every situation is different. Every student is different, and every student's going to react different. And we need to learn what that is, and we're going to make mistakes along the way. So look at yourself as an experimenter as you go through this, and have the expectations that some things are going to go really good and some things probably are not going to go really good. So those are some two key advice pieces for you. And like I already talked about this a little bit, but don't become overwhelmed. All right, I want this for you. It should be fun. All right, it should be exciting to implement something where you get to use your creativity, where students are really excited and so forth. So don't become overwhelmed. So that relates back to the first point, and that is just to keep it as simple as possible, right? So what you're going to need to do, and we talked about this in level 1, is just brainstorm, right? Now think about, in your mind, think about something, a unit that you've taught in the past. Maybe it's a unit you're bored of. Maybe it's a unit that your students seem bored of. We've got to get ourselves out of that funk, right? And get our students out of that funk. So again, gamification is not completely recreating the wheel. It's taking a situation that already exists and taking these elements out of a game and applying them to whatever exists. So I'm going to explain how I implement it here in a second, but I want you to think for yourself here right now. How could you apply this? All right. So this is what I did. Now, a couple times a year when I taught elementary physical education, all right, I would do an obstacle course, right? I love obstacle courses. So and another thing that's really important right now, and I'll talk about it, is just like always make learning the center of this, of everything that you do. So this particular obstacle course was centered around the components of health-related fitness, right? So students got to go through this obstacle course, got to feel the components of health-related physical fitness as they went through it, right? So things such as cardiovascular endurance, muscular endurance. So we had some rope swings, we had jump ropes, and then we had the bouldering wall and so forth. So it was just a really generic drawing and a visualization of what that was. But, they came in all excited and they did it, but there are some things here to think about, all right? So 10 minutes in, right? So the level of engagement seems to decrease, students aren't excited about moving quite as fast or things such as that, right? Um, and I also noticed, I was like, this is my fault, but I see some students that are being dishonest right now. I kind of set them up for that, right? Because there's some really cool obstacles and maybe some that aren't as cool to them, right? So I kind of set them up for that. But I was like, you know, not only do students, obviously, I want them to be physically literate, which I'm sure you do, but I want them to be good people. And that's like such a huge piece of what we do, right? As physical educators, is try to develop good people, all right? So I began to kind of brainstorm about this idea. And this is after, I did a couple rounds of gamification that were too complicated. And through that, through this brainstorm, right, the idea was to create 5 different ninjas, okay? Now, when the students came into my class, they had the opportunity to earn these ninjas, to earn these ninja badges, okay? So we have a marathon ninja. This was based upon how many laps that you did around the obstacle course, all right? We had the grit ninja. So this is when something was very difficult, made you scared, that you failed at a couple times, that you persevered through it, that you kept doing it, which is a great life skill, right? Jump rope ninja, which was, I had a jump rope station because jumping rope is a very important skill at the elementary level, all levels, but it's a great tool for students to learn, and you have to be very patient. So they got to set a jump rope goal for themselves. And then an integrity badge, right? So this integrity badge allowed students to essentially think about being honest and think about, not skipping any obstacles, thinking about putting others before themselves, those types of things. And then the black ninja badge on that other page was the master badge, okay? So that's students' ability to essentially earn all of the badges, all right? So they got to choose though. So if we think about the game elements that are associated with this idea, all right, I based them off a couple different ones. So we have badges, and then we have a quest. So you're a student that's going on a quest as a ninja to earn these ninja badges. So it's a very simplistic quest, simplistic in my opinion idea, right? It wasn't overly complicated. So I think those things really help to flow, because there's so many times that I can think about that I have a great idea that I've spent hours planning and it just doesn't work out. And then I make things very simple and hey, it works out. So I think that that's a really important lesson. So 2 parts of this obstacle course also had to do with self-directed learning, right? They got to choose their badges, and then the problem solving, right? And I think this problem solving is related to goal setting, right? They had to solve, like how many, all right, let's think to myself. First of all, how do I set goals? Which is a really important skill, right? So setting a goal is difficult for anybody. Goal setting is difficult. And elementary students, and I think human beings in general, sometimes over or under set goals for themselves. We're just not always very good at it. We need lots of practice to set goals. So giving your students the opportunity to choose their goals and then set how they make them could be very beneficial to your students, as they were to mine. That was the key piece. I got to choose what goal I wanted, and I got to choose how I was going to meet that goal. Meaning, if I was going to do jumping rope, maybe my goal was to do 20. All right, so I did 20. Maybe I didn't. Okay, so those are things that they need to go through and think about, because goal setting again is a pretty difficult skill. All right, so just everything, again, is centered around learning. I just wanted to bring to our attention that all ideas that we have need to come back to standards. And these great little outcomes right here were associated with the idea at hand that we did. So just a quick little explanation of each badge. I'm going to share with you a resource. It's a blog that I've written. It's going to have all this information too. And you're going to be able to download these ninjas if you want to. But basically, so the ninja badge, like I talked about, you set an individual goal for yourself to earn the ninja badge. Okay, the integrity badge is based upon being honest and trustworthy during class. And that's a big piece, the integrity badge for me. Making good people, helping make good people. And then we have the marathon badge, helping students to set a goal for themselves around how many times they want to go around the obstacle course. The grit badge, which is basically identifying obstacles they're having trouble with and meeting those on head on and not giving up when they face, like an obstacle in life. That's kind of the idea. And then the master ninja badge here is the badge that they could choose to if they want. Like you can earn all 5 if you'd like, or you can earn 1. So I think that whole piece was very helpful, where they got to choose. Okay, you can earn 1, you can earn a lot, you can earn a lot of badges, and it helped me to really differentiate learning. And the reason that I say that, when it comes to, we'll use an example of a skill that's difficult to master, and that's jumping rope. Now, we have some students that can jump 5 times, and we have some students that can just sit there and jump 100 times in a row or more, right? So we're all over the board. But this allows students to not worry as much about what that other student is doing, but to focus on themselves and getting better for themselves. And the earning this reward is, you're not comparing yourself necessarily to anyone else. You're just earning this individual goal for yourself, which is something that I would say is part of my philosophy, and it's just helping students to get better themselves and not compare themselves to others. So how this worked was, students walked in, I explained the obstacle course to them, right? And I had these 5 different sets of 8.5 by 11 sheets, right, with the ninja badge. And then down here, like you've been doing, this is a QR code, right? And we'll talk about how to make this QR code and how to do this if you're interested in the next level here. So basically, I said, these are the different ninjas that you can earn. This is the obstacle course. You choose what you want. At the end of class, students came up to me and had to tell me what badge they earned. And our school is a 1-to-1 iPad school. Now, that was beneficial to me and my students, right? And I realized that. So what that meant is they brought their iPads to class, and they'd scan the badges that they earned, the ninjas that they earned, and then what they'd do is take a screenshot and save them. And what was really cool about this whole process was that students set them as their wallpapers on their iPads, which was great. So every time they opened their iPad throughout the day or at home with their parents, they got to see my class. And that was kind of a moment that I said, okay, I've got something here. I've got students really enough excited about this that they want to make their own choice to set this as a wallpaper, that was a win for me. But there's obviously other ways that you can set this up, right? You don't have to use the digital component of this. Maybe you have stickers for your students to earn different badges. There's so many different things. Ryan Armstrong is another physical education teacher who I suggest that you search on Twitter, who's done these jump roping ninja badges or ninja belts, which have been highly successful for him, where students they level up for these different jump roping challenges, and it's really self-directed. So there's not a digital component to his, right? He just has it up on his wall and students earn it. So there's more than one way to do that. And this is just the way I did it. But hopefully it just kind of gets something in your idea. Like, oh, I think when you're thinking about your students, oh, this would meet their needs, this may not. So if you desire to have these resources here, we'll get to that in a second. My fault, sorry. So there should be an assessment component to this, right? So essentially what we're doing is assessing. So that part was kind of informal, right? But there needs to be some kind of assessment component to this. And for me, I believe that a journal is a great idea. So it allows students to reflect. But during class today, I earned this badge. During class today, I attempted to earn this badge, and I didn't. So some self-reflection in there, and also some hard data for you and what you're doing as a teacher, right? Because we need that as teachers, as physical education or health teachers, we need that hard data, right? So that's definitely something to think about. Now, another piece of this is, I get this question a lot when I present this information at conferences and other places, is what about students cheating? What about students being dishonest? Well, as we all know in the world, there's a certain percentage of people that choose to be dishonest, right? But my whole thinking is that, first of all, I've never had a big problem with cheating and being dishonest. Is I think it's all about how we set up our classes, right? It's all about what we reinforce. That reinforce that integrity and honesty piece over and over and over again. But you know what? Having the opportunity as a human being to practice integrity, like, you're going to have students that maybe choose to be dishonest, that scan that badge that they didn't earn, right? But they're going to have an opportunity to do that multiple times, and then they're going to have this opportunity to reflect in a journal, and then you're going to, as a trusted adult, reinforce that to them. And that's all about this whole piece about being a good human, right? So we need opportunities, students need opportunities to show integrity and honesty, and to practice that, and to make a mistake about that, and to go through that. So I think that is a highly beneficial piece. But I haven't had a huge issue with the dishonesty piece related to badges. And again, that might be back to the setting your own goal, right, piece of this whole thing, where this is my goal, I set it. No one told me I had to do this goal. I chose. That type of thing, I think, helps as well. So if you're interested in this resource, you can access it two ways. You can download it using that QR code on the far right side, scanning it with your phone, or you can look in the resources that I've collected for you and give them to IAFRD. So either one is fine. And you can have not only you can have this whole sheet, these different sheets that I've created, or you can just have the badge itself if you want to create your own Ninja badges. So I've had a both. I've done laid out both of them. They're mine. They're now yours. You don't owe me anything. So just take it, and I hope that it's helpful to you or your students. Okay. Now there's another piece here to this. I just want to talk about really quickly. And I got to thinking lately here about this, and just as we've all thought about what's going on in the world right now in COVID-19. And, a lot of us, I think most of us, are going to be starting back at school on time, and it's going to be a wild ride until, the foreseeable future and vaccine or whatever, right? So, my thinking is there's a lot of ways that you can use gamification through distance that could be beneficial to your students, right? As we begin to think about this piece, and as we continue to try to not only have grace for ourselves, grace for our students as we go through this, but also try to learn, have our students learn, because we know how important that is, right? So with COVID-19, I think this is one thing that gamification or badges could really kind of help you with. And it's the standard 5. And there's more than this. The social interaction piece there at the bottom might be difficult, but we all love Zoom, right? So you can jump into Zoom, which is actually really obviously important, the social interaction piece. But if we think about valuing physical activity, enjoyment, students are on their own with their families or their guardians. They have an opportunity to really focus on this. And so in the past, I've created a lot of different physical activity badges. So I taught in a place called Bend, Oregon, which is a beautiful place, which is it's 20 minutes from a ski hill, Mount Bachelor, right? So there's definitely a good mixture of people that have it and don't have it. So as I went through this and thinking about these different physical activities that students can learn about and learn which ones they like, I thought, and I tried to include some of those. We've got skiing, which was something that a lot of my students did. And we've got fishing in an outdoor community. We've got hiking, which is a more affordable activity if it's close by, right? And then we've got parkour, which is essentially free, skateboarding, which a lot of students have, or a bike, and gymnastics. So these were some of the activities that my students did on a regular basis. So if you can use these, and if you could, apply them in thinking about, okay, how can I get students physically active during this time? How can I get their families out and valuing it and learning more about these physical activities and learning about the skills that are associated with them and all sorts of different parts of it, right? So you're more than welcome to use these lifetime physical activity badges or whatever you want to call them. They're all available for your use. And there's also some more in there. And you can do that again by scanning. And I hope that perhaps could give you a little bit of a boost if you get yourself into a jam and are wondering what to do with your students during COVID-19. So you can scan that, or you'll find it in the resources that are available to you. So, all right. We're 36 minutes in about, and you have completed level 3, which was the longest level so far. So congrats on that. Way to go. All right, now if you're interested, again, because you completed this, feel free to go ahead and scan this badge and earn it and share it, do whatever you like with it, use it with your students and so forth. Okay. All right, everyone, congrats on finishing levels 1, 2, and 3 and unlocking level 4. So welcome to level 4, which is planet creation, which gives you the opportunity here to essentially create your own activities for your students using gamification. We're going to focus on one specific aspect, game element of gamification, and that is badging, all right? And that's what we're going to spend most of our time with right here. So let's get right into the level 4 here for the sake of time. So level 1, I'm just going to lay out some design steps and some things for you to consider as you do this. So first thing that's really, really important is that you brainstorm, all right? And a lot of this brainstorming is knowing your students, okay? Now think to yourself, when I know your students, what are they into? What's their socioeconomic status? What type of cultures are at my school and so forth? And this will help you to determine whether or not they should use technology or not use technology, right? So know your students. And then, of course, use your creativity, right? This is a great opportunity for you to use your creativity as you go through this. So the second thing, as I've talked about throughout this presentation, is really, really important to center your idea around student learning and standards, right? Now, again, so this is content that's already been developed, right, beforehand. And what you're doing is you're just taking game elements that you're interested in and putting it into your pre-existing content to help it to be more engaging and maybe change some behavior of your students and help them to be more self-directed. So there's some things that we can do to create these badges, all right? You can make badges using a graphic design program such as Sketch. If you're feeling ambitious, Sketch is a Mac program. You could also use Adobe Illustrator. I love doing this. I should say this. I loved doing this when I had time. I've got kids. I'm working on my PhD. I'm starting a job as a professor. So I don't have time to do that. So I rely on Canva.com, which is a platform, which is great to use for graphic design. And we're going to go through that here real quick. So Canva is really what I suggest. But if you're interested in delving in and creating your own stuff, go right ahead. I recommend Sketch or Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so the first thing we do here is we go into a graphic design program and create our own badges. There's also a lot of badges. If you Google digital badges, you're going to find a lot of different stuff out there. Okay, so basically, this is Canva that I'm doing this presentation in, actually, that allows you to have a presentation feature, which is great. So this is Canva, which is a graphic design program. So there's lots of different templates when you go into the graphic design program, okay? There's lots of different, anything from infographic to just different types of presentations, all sorts of different stuff. Now, Canva is freemium, meaning there's free features and there's features that are not free. So some of the features that are really cool are subscription-based. So my recommendation for you, if you're really interested in pursuing this, is to try to maybe spend a month on you get a free trial, by the way, but spend some time, maybe just a little bit of money and then unsubscribe. Don't keep subscribing. Get on there, subscribe when you need it, unsubscribe when you don't need it, and just do it kind of like that. And it won't end up costing you too much, because if you're like me, we have a lot of subscriptions right now in the world, right? So it's important to manage those. Okay, so say for instance, you decided that you wanted to do a presentation, and I've actually created one right here. So this is called test presentation. So you click on presentation and you pull something up. Okay, so say that you want to create a digital badge for your students. Okay, so again, this is, if you don't have to create a digital badge. There's different ways to make them. You could print something out off of Canva. You could make some stickers for your students. So this is just one idea for you. If you have and your students have the ability to access digital resources. So say you see over here, these are things I've recently added. Say you want to use Baby Yoda, which we have in this presentation. So I type in Baby Yoda, and then we've got some things that should be loading. Um, Here we go. Let's do this again. I'll talk about what I just did there in just a second. So, okay, there's Baby Yoda, right? So what I do is I just click on Baby Yoda and I drag them, and then I can resize them. Say I want them a little bit bigger, obviously center them. And up here I have some text. There's a lot of different text features in Canva, tons and tons. So this is the Elements button. It has so many different features within the Elements button that I suggest that you spend some time going through. There's a lot, there's lots of tutorials and everything on here. I'm just giving you a brief kind of overview to hopefully get you a little excited to check it out. So this is just a test, right? So basically, there it is, right? I've got my test and I go, well, you know what? I want a little bit of animation on there. I think that's kind of cool. So I go here, I apply the animation feature. I go, I want it to be a circle, like around the planets that I had for my students. They might get excited if there's a little bit of animation, right? So I drag and drop this animated circle. Baby Yoda is looking good in his circle. And let's just say we're ready to go here. All right, now up here, there's lots of different ways that you can download a Canva presentation or a Canva image, whatever it is you're working on. You can even create Microsoft PowerPoint presentations, which is a new feature and really cool. So, but this has animation, which is a key piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to download it as an MP4, right? So you're going to push the download button. It really doesn't take that long. Okay. So once you've downloaded your particular MP4 or whatever it is you're downloading, what I suggest that you do is you have to have a landing spot. Like I said, a lot of you can take this now and put it in your own school's learning management system and send it to your students through that way. I'm going to show you a really easy way to also do this. So using Google. Now, a lot of us have Google accounts right now. If you don't, just sign up for a Gmail account. That's a really easy way to get yourself a Google account, right? So when you get yourself a Google account, what it's going to, this is Google Drive right here, let's just say. So you go to Google Drive. You could even search, I'll show you real quick. Those of you that are not familiar, so just search Google Drive. Okay, now you're going to see this. You can click on it. It will bring you into Google. And if you have already a login, you can just access it there. Okay, so moving on here, what you're going to do, and you can see I've already kind of played around with it a little bit. You're going to grab your download and you're going to drop it into Google Drive, or if you want to be more organized like I've chosen to be, drop it into a Google Drive folder. So you can simply make a folder by clicking on the folder he is. So we're going to double click on Baby Yoda. So there he is. Okay, so great. All right, that's what I sent you right there. So the QR code that you saw earlier was simply this. Now what you can do is we have these 3 different bubbles over here, right? 1, 2, 3. All right, 3 circles. You're going to go to the share button. Okay. Now you're going to go down here. And you're going to just make sure yours might look different than mine. It says anyone on the internet can view this link. You can change it, right, by going to this drop-down menu. Restricted means not very many people can use it, or limited to people that you give permission to, or anyone with a link. And for me, for this, it's easiest if anyone can view it. But that might okay. So when I copy the link, I'm copying the link to not the folder, but to this specific quick video, right? So now we've moved into this next stage here. So I'll go back to my presentation to show you the different steps here. So we had place the digital badge into Google Drive and set the privacy setting to anyone can view. Check, we did that. I'm just gonna scroll through here for the sake of time. All right, down here we have make a QR code. Perfect is out there. So recently I've stumbled upon flow code. Okay, so I still just copied and pasted this QR code, or I copied and pasted that link of the test that I just showed you from our Google folder. Right, now we're gonna make a QR code by going copy and paste. And it looks as though, there it is. Great, it's there. So I just copied and pasted, I put it there. So it's asking me, it's prompting me for next, okay? It's asking me to create. So on flow code here, it's gonna ask you to sign in. You go, no, I'm not gonna sign in unless you want to. You just bypass that and you can just go to download QR code. And you can upload your QR code in any images to Canva. So I'm just going to drag and drop this code, okay? And it's going to take a second and it's going to be ready to go. And now, if you were to scan this QR code, it would take you to the test that we just completed. So that's kind of the next step that you can take. So right now there we go, we're back into our presentation mode. And that is the 6th step. So you hang the QR code up on the wall for a badge if your students have access to those. So that's just one way to show you how to display a digital badge in your class. Obviously, you don't have to use technology. We talked about Ryan Armstrong's idea. There's different ways to do that. You could simply have it up in the wall. Students could touch the badge if they earn it. They could have their own, essentially, sticker board or just like trophy case, it's called in gamification. It could also be beneficial to them. So keep that in mind. Hey, with that, congratulations. You have passed level 4. So way to go here. So here's your level 4 digital badge. So congratulations on that and passing the creativity level. So if you'd like a copy of this specific digital badge, go ahead and scan this QR code right here, and the badge will become yours. All right, everyone. So I know that was a lot of information. So I could spend days talking to you about how to create things, and we just didn't have that. So go ahead and if you want, play that back a couple times. I hope that little brief tutorial about how to use Canva was helpful. You can reach out to me. There's tons of tutorials on Canva or how to do this. That concludes the presentation and your quest with Baby Yoda. So thank you so much for being part of the presentation, everyone. And most importantly, thank you for all you do for students, everyone. Take care.